You lose control of yourself every time you let something small steal your peace. That's the raw truth. Emotionally strong people don't live easier lives. They've simply mastered the one thing that changes everything: self-governance. And if there's one message that Napoleon Hill made crystal clear in his teachings, it's this: he who does not master his mind is condemned to be a slave to his circumstances. Hill believed that thought is the most powerful force in the universe. That's where everything begins. If you can't govern what you think and feel, someone else will do it for you. This isn't about suppressing emotion, it's about commanding it. Emotional discipline is not coldness. It's clarity under pressure. It's the choice to respond rather than react. It's the inner strength to remain grounded when everything around you tries to pull you out of alignment. Imagine walking through life without carrying the weight of every criticism, every delay, every careless word thrown your way. Imagine not folding under anxiety, fear, or anger. Just presence. Just control. Just that unshakable force Hill referred to as inner authority. The kind of power that is born from mastering yourself completely. In this video, I'm going to walk you through that path. The path where you stop being a slave to your emotions and become their master. Hill used to say, people don't fail because they lack talent. They fail because they lack inner direction. And that direction starts with a single decision: to stop reacting and start responding with purpose. Life is loud. Opinions, judgments, expectations. Everyone wants to tell you who you should be and how you should feel. But what if true strength is found in silence? In that conscious decision not to react, not to give in, not to fold, but to keep your mind steady while everything shakes. Hill wrote that the greatest leaders are those who can remain calm while everyone else is screaming, and who can act with precision when everyone else is frozen by doubt. That's what I call the nothing affects me mentality. The ability to walk through storms without losing your composure. Not because you don't feel, but because you master what you feel. If there's ever been a real key to personal freedom, this is it. The ability to remain calm when everything falls apart. And the first step is to separate your emotions from your circumstances. When you let the outside world dictate your inner world, you become a puppet of chance. But when you train your mind to remain grounded in chaos, just like Hill taught, you become the architect of your own reality. Because the world respects those who do not flinch, who do not justify themselves, who do not beg to be understood. The world respects those who command with presence alone. Think of the greatest figures in history. None of them were impulsive. None of them allowed insults or fleeting emotions to dictate their actions. They moved with purpose, with clarity, with authority, as if they knew something the rest of the world hadn't yet figured out. And they did. They knew this. True power lies in an unshakable mind, not in shouting, not in rage, but in quiet, relentless control of oneself. There's one lesson most people overlook, yet Napoleon Hill carved it into every one of his teachings. Thought always comes before action. What you believe shapes what you do. Every uncontrolled emotional impulse is a direct surrender of your personal power. But when you respond with intention, with clarity, and with detachment, the world doesn't just watch you, it adjusts to you. Picture someone trying to provoke you with empty words. They want you to snap, to scream, to lose your temper. But instead of reacting, you simply smile and walk away. That small gesture? It dismantles everything. Because those who seek to control your emotional state feed on your reaction. And when you deny them that reaction, you win. And you win in silence, without needing to explain yourself, without seeking justice from someone who's never going to give it. That silence, when chosen with purpose, becomes more powerful than any argument. Hill called it applied self-control, the invisible force that separates real leaders from the crowd. The same principle that protects you from insults also protects you from failure, rejection, and loss. While most people drown in guilt and frustration, the truly strong observe, learn, and move forward. They don't cling to what went wrong. They use it as fuel, as a compass adjustment. They don't identify with failure. They transform through it. Hill said, "Every adversity carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. But that seed only grows if you can keep your mind open and your heart calm. And that kind of mental strength doesn't fall from the sky. It's built, it's trained, it's repeated. It's a habit, a daily commitment to your own power. It begins the moment you learn to pause and ask yourself, does this truly affect my mission? Is this fleeting emotion really worth my peace? Almost every time, the answer is no. And right there, you take back control." Hill insisted, "Self-discipline is the foundation of all lasting achievement. This isn't about living cold or detached. It's about choosing every response with full awareness. It's about becoming the kind of person who doesn't live at the mercy of the world, but leads their world from within." Another key that Hill emphasized again and again was visualization. See yourself as unshakable. Visualize your calm in the middle of chaos. Picture yourself walking with peace while the world trembles around you. Why? Because the brain doesn't distinguish between real and vividly imagined experience. What you repeat with emotion becomes your internal truth. Reinforce that image every single day. Talk to yourself like a leader. Train your mental language. Decide how you will act under pressure, and rehearse it. Because when the real challenge comes, you won't be improvising. You'll be executing what you already rehearsed in your mind. That is preparation. That is real power. Let people wonder how you do it. Let them ask how you stay so calm when everyone else loses their mind. Let them be confused by your silence, shaken by your focus, and impressed by your presence. Hill taught that true authority isn't imposed. It's projected. It's not shouted. It's felt. It's the energy of someone who knows exactly who they are and has no need to prove anything. Because real power doesn't live in aggression. It lives in presence. The kind of presence that doesn't need words to command respect. A silent force that doesn't beg to be understood. An energy that walks with purpose and refuses to be pulled off course. To master that, Hill said, is to master life itself. The strongest people you've ever met aren't the loudest in the room. They're the ones who stay calm while everyone else falls apart. They don't follow their impulses. They follow their principles. And here lies one of the most powerful truths Napoleon Hill repeated again and again. Emotional detachment is not a lack of feeling. It is emotional mastery applied with intelligence. It is the ability to feel everything without becoming a slave to anything. That's the essence of inner freedom. Imagine being in the middle of an argument. The other person is trying to push your buttons. They're looking to trigger you, to throw you off balance. But you have two choices: react or remain. The weak react. The strong observe. The weak respond with anger. The strong respond with silence. And that silence? Hill saw it as one of the highest forms of personal power, because it means you're not giving away your peace. You're not letting someone else hijack your internal state. You've understood something that changes everything. Your inner world is sacred, and no one enters without your permission. The more you cultivate that level of control, the clearer you begin to see the world. Chaos no longer scares you. It becomes a test. Attacks become background noise. The life that once felt like a battlefield becomes a chessboard. And the calmest mind always wins. Your thoughts shape your reality. What you focus on expands. What you feed grows. If you feed your mind with fear, doubt, or the need for validation, you lose your center. But when you take hold of your thinking, as Hill taught, you become untouchable. You don't react to the world anymore. You lead it from within. Picture a man who has lost everything: his business, his reputation, his wealth, most people would see him as a failure, but not him. He sees a beginning, because his real wealth is still intact. His mind is still strong, his purpose untouched, and with that alone, he rebuilds it all, stronger, wiser, more resilient. That's the power of detachment. Detachment isn't surrender. It's choosing not to carry what no longer serves you. It's letting go of the identity built on past accomplishments and returning to your essence. Hill said it clearly. No one has ever achieved success without first facing temporary defeat. But only those who don't cling to failure are the ones who rise again. If your identity is built on your victories, you'll collapse when you lose. But if your identity is anchored in purpose, you'll rise 10 times if needed. And that's the difference between the persistent and the unstable. Most people don't quit because things get hard. They quit because they can't manage their own emotions. They start strong, but one setback makes them crumble. They let fear take over. They let frustration rule. They let doubt sabotage every step forward. But those who train for emotional detachment understand a difficult truth. Emotions are visitors. They come, they shake you, and then they leave. They don't have the right to destroy what you've built with years of discipline. That's why your mind must be trained like a muscle. Daily practice, firm intention, conscious repetition. You don't respond to the first impulse. You breathe, you observe, you choose with calm. Hill called this spiritual maturity applied to success. It means acting from awareness, not urgency. It means responding not from the emotion of the moment, but from the mission that drives you. Next time you receive a harsh comment, an offense, or an injustice, pause. Ask yourself, does this really matter in the context of the life I'm building? Almost always, the answer will be a resounding no, and that's when you win. When you reach that level of clarity, you don't react, you respond, and you do it from calm, from purpose, just as Napoleon Hill taught. True wisdom is not reacting fast, it's acting with emotional intelligence. Detachment also requires vision. It demands purpose. Because when you have something truly meaningful to accomplish, distractions lose their power. Small annoyances no longer pull you off course. Empty criticisms no longer pierce your spirit. Why? Because your energy is aligned with something bigger. Your time becomes sacred. Your peace, non-negotiable. Your focus, razor-sharp. While others get lost in drama, you stand tall. While many chase validation, you move forward with certainty. And in that silent walk, you gain something rare. Inner authority. The kind of authority that needs no external validation. It doesn't shout. It doesn't ask to be seen. It radiates. Hill taught that real confidence is built in solitude, tested in conflict, and proven in silence. You don't need the world to clap for you to know who you are. They've taught you wrong. They told you to fit in, to please, to be accepted. But that's the trap. The more you try to fit in, the more you abandon your truth. And when you abandon your truth, you surrender your power. Real freedom begins the moment you decide you don't need everyone to understand you. You don't need to be liked by everyone. And that's okay, because the people who matter will recognize your strength, not because you demand it, but because you don't compromise it. Start choosing yourself every day, in silence, without explanations, without apologies. Every conscious step you take builds your foundation, and in that process, you'll uncover one of the deepest truths Napoleon Hill ever revealed. The real luxury isn't what others think of you, it's living in total alignment with your own essence. Criticism will come. No matter who you are or what you do, someone will always have something to say. But what defines the strong is not what they hear, it's how they choose to respond. Most people crumble after a single negative comment. They feel attacked. They run to defend themselves. They waste energy trying to prove their worth. But the truly unshakable? They don't do that. They listen calmly. They analyze logically. They discard emotionlessly everything that doesn't add value. Because a critique is just that, words thrown from another level of awareness. Often spoken by people who've never walked your path. Hill reminded us, no one has the right to define your value if they haven't walked in your shoes. Or D, that's why criticism only holds the power you decide to give it. If you react, you hand over that power. If you filter, you stay in control. There are two kinds of criticism in this world, one that builds and one that breaks. The first is rare, and it comes from those who've walked through their own battles. People who know what it means to fight in silence. Their words are meant to sharpen you, not to tear you down. They challenge you because they see your potential. But the second? It's everywhere. It comes from people who are drowning in their own insecurity, frustration, or envy. And this kind of criticism, it has nothing to do with you. It's just noise, loud, messy, and entirely irrelevant to your path. Napoleon Hill taught that you must filter every voice that tries to shape your identity. Not all feedback is truth. Not all opinions are worth your attention. And the moment you give weight to every negative comment is the moment you hand over your emotional freedom. Think of a sculptor. He's carving a masterpiece. His vision is clear, but behind him, a crowd gathers, some applauding, some laughing, some insulting. And yet, he doesn't stop. He doesn't turn around. He doesn't explain. Why? Because he knows what he's building. And he knows that none of them are qualified to understand the process. Their noise doesn't change the sculpture. His focus does. That's the mindset of those who create legacies. A mindset Napoleon Hill called definiteness of purpose. It's the ability to stay on your path while the world tries to pull you in 100 directions. The more you grow, the louder the noise gets. Because when you rise, you trigger those who chose to stay small. When you stand firm, you challenge those who bend. When you build in silence, you expose those who only talk. But here's the truth. You don't owe anyone an explanation. Don't waste your time trying to convince people who never had the courage to walk your road. Don't explain your process to those who've never built anything. Don't justify your growth to those who fear their own. The ones who are truly building something don't have time to argue. They don't stop for every voice. They respond with silence, with focus, with presence. And that silence? It's not weakness. It's dominion. It's proof that your emotions are no longer tied to validation. It's the language of those who've chosen to lead their lives from within. Because silence speaks louder than noise. It confuses the ones who expected you to break. It shakes those who live off of reaction. It demands respect, not by force, but by presence. Your calm is your shield. Your composure is your power. And when pressure rises, that's when your true character is revealed. Napoleon Hill said it clearly. Character is not built during easy times. It's revealed when life gets hard. Anyone can appear strong when life flows smoothly. But who are you when nothing goes your way? When plans fail? When people betray you? When you're pushed into discomfort? That's where strength is tested. And the ones who break under pressure? They were never strong to begin with. They were simply unchallenged, unexposed, untested. But those who've trained for the storm, they don't flinch. They don't beg the world to calm down. They prepare themselves to walk through fire with their heads held high. They're not hoping for comfort. They're ready for resistance. And that mindset? That's what separates those who collapse under criticism from those who rise with every challenge. The latter don't seek applause. They seek alignment. They don't crave being understood. They crave being unshakable. And that, my friend, is how legacies are born. Not through noise, but through unbreakable clarity. The real enemy was never out there. It was never the person who offended you. Never the failure that knocked you down. Never the delay, the rejection, the betrayal. The real enemy has always been within, in the thoughts you allowed, the emotions you didn't filter, the impulses you didn't control. That's what Napoleon Hill meant when he warned, "If you don't conquer self, you will be conquered by self." Let that sink in. You were not born with emotional discipline. No one is. You build it. You train it. You strengthen it with repetition. Just like a muscle. Just like a warrior trains for battle. You train for life. And how do you train? By not reacting. By pausing. By choosing. When something small tries to shake you, you breathe. When someone disrespects you, you observe. When life delays you, you stay still, mentally unshaken. This isn't weakness. It's not passivity. It's spiritual maturity applied to daily life. It's what separates those who react to everything from those who respond with intention. Think about this. Most people fall apart from a single negative comment, a word, a glance, a moment. That's all it takes. And suddenly, their peace is gone. Their mind is spiraling. They hand over the reins of their life to someone who probably forgot the conversation 5 minutes later. But you are building something different. You are training your mind to remain grounded when others lose balance. You're learning to ask the question that Hill himself used as a mental checkpoint. Does this truly matter for the life I'm building? Is this worth disturbing my inner peace? And the answer, again and again, will be no. Most of what we react to has zero relevance to our actual purpose. The majority of what steals our energy is meaningless in the long run, but we pay for it anyway, with stress, with tension, with regret. You want to be free? Then start filtering. Every emotion, every thought, every trigger. Napoleon Hill didn't teach success based on luck or external advantage. He taught success based on mental clarity, emotional authority, and inner alignment. He believed success begins long before results appear, in silence, in solitude, in self-command. That's why your focus must become sacred. Your peace must become your non-negotiable boundary, and your purpose must become your compass. Let others waste their lives in endless reaction. You build yours through deliberate action. Let others beg to be understood. You walk in certainty, even when no one claps. Let others lose themselves in temporary storms. You remain rooted in the long game, because that's what separates warriors from wanderers. When you build a mind that's not swayed by emotion, a mind that doesn't fold under pressure, a mind that doesn't seek validation, you become what Hill called a self-made thinker. A mind forged not by circumstances, but by conscious direction. And here's the truth most won't admit. The more you silence the noise outside, the more you start hearing the truth inside. That inner voice, that deep knowing, it only gets louder in the stillness. But most people never hear it, because they're too busy reacting. You don't have to live like that. You can build a new system. You can train your mind every single day. Start with the small things. A rude comment, a delayed message, a long line. Use them as reps in your mental gym, not to suppress emotion, but to command your state, not to fake control, but to build it for real. Because when the real test comes, and it will, you won't be improvising. You'll be executing what you've trained, with clarity, with focus, with calm. And that's the difference between those who fall and those who rise above it all. The world doesn't reward noise. It rewards presence. Not the kind that shouts to be noticed, but the kind that silently commands respect. Not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that draws it effortlessly. Napoleon Hill taught that you don't need to scream to be heard, and you don't need to convince anyone to be respected. The most powerful people in history weren't the loudest in the room. They were the calmest, because calmness under pressure is rare, and what's rare becomes powerful. Most people today live in reaction. They react to every post, every opinion, every mood shift, every criticism. They are constantly adjusting who they are based on what the world throws at them. But those who lead from within, they move differently. They carry an energy that doesn't bend. They walk into a room, and something shifts. Not because they force it, but because they've built something solid within themselves. That's the power Hill described as self-confidence built in silence. You don't need to broadcast your transformation. You live it. You don't need to prove your worth. You embody it. Imagine this. Someone insults you publicly. They want you to crack, to fire back, to lose your cool. But you don't. You stay still. You meet their storm with silence. And that silence? It does what shouting never could. It unnerves them. It exposes them. It empowers you. Because the one who needs to yell has already lost control. But the one who leads with presence? He owns the room without saying a word. Hill said it clearly. Those who cannot control themselves will always be controlled by others. And if you're constantly explaining, constantly defending, constantly justifying, then you're living on emotional autopilot. But when you choose stillness over reaction, when you choose to walk away instead of explode, when you choose to lead instead of please, you become something the world isn't prepared for, a grounded human being. That's your new identity, not someone who folds, not someone who pleads, not someone who lives in reaction. You've done the work, you've trained in silence, and now you walk as someone who knows exactly who they are, with or without applause. Because, let's be honest, applause fades. Validation is temporary. The crowd is fickle. But your inner conviction, that's yours. It doesn't waver. It doesn't depend on who's watching. So lead with it. Let your calm speak louder than the world's chaos. Let your values outlast their opinions. Let your presence shake rooms that your words never could. You're not here to be loud. You're here to be solid. You're not here to impress. You're here to influence. And real influence isn't noisy. It's not desperate. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't need to win arguments. Real influence is quiet, precise, intentional. And those who carry it, they don't explain themselves. They don't beg to be seen. They just are. So the next time the world tries to trigger you, tempt you, distract you, diminish you, pause. Remember who you are, and let your silence remind them of what they can't control. Because in that stillness, you lead. In that quiet, you rise. And in that presence, you win. There comes a point in your journey when you stop chasing validation and start building something far more valuable: internal alignment. Napoleon Hill said it best. Success is not in impressing, it's in influencing. And influence begins when you live in alignment with your values, not with trends, not with approval, not with the crowd. Because the crowd doesn't build legacies. The crowd reacts, while leaders build. Most people live exhausting lives trying to be accepted. They mold themselves into what others expect. They filter their truth, silence their instincts, dilute their voice, just to be liked. But what's the cost? The cost is their authenticity, their power, their inner freedom. Hill warned about this trap. The moment you start living for applause, you become a puppet. Every cheer becomes your oxygen. Every criticism becomes your poison. And suddenly, you're no longer free. You're owned by opinions. But those who know who they are dangerous in the best way. Because they can't be manipulated. They don't need validation to move forward. They walk with a sense of purpose that doesn't fade when ignored or criticized. Their compass is internal. And that's where true freedom lives. When you begin to filter who you listen to, everything changes. Because not every voice deserves your attention. Not every opinion comes from wisdom. Not every critique was meant to build. Ask yourself, have they walked where you've walked? Have they overcome what you've overcome? Have they built what you're trying to build? If not, why give them power over your direction? Hill taught that the most authentic people, the most magnetic, the most respected, are not the ones who explain who they are. They are the ones who simply live it. And in that silence, they project more power than words ever could. You don't need the last word. You don't need to correct every misunderstanding. You don't need to convince those who never intended to understand you. Because your life isn't a debate, it's a mission. And a person on a mission doesn't waste time justifying themselves. They don't shrink to make others comfortable. They don't get distracted by empty noise. They move with clarity, with direction, with fire in their soul and peace in their mind. You've spent too long handing out pieces of your identity to people who don't even know what they stand for. It's time to call that energy back. It's time to move differently, to stop explaining yourself where you're not being heard, to stop justifying what your soul already knows is right. Let your silence say what words can't. Let your peace unsettle those addicted to noise. Let your self-control remind the world that you are not here to beg for space. You are here to own your space. Hill wrote, "The world has a habit of making room for the man who knows where he is going. So walk like you know where you're going, even when the road is unclear, even when the noise is loud, even when no one claps. Because clarity is magnetic, purpose is powerful. And when you live from both, you don't just move through the world, you move the world. The world will always test you. It will push you, provoke you, try to shake you out of your center. But the greatest battles are not out there. They're in your mind." Napoleon Hill made it clear, "The man who wins is the man who thinks he can." But he also warned, most people never win because they never take control of their thinking. They let circumstances dictate their beliefs. They let emotions run their decisions. They let other people define their value. And the result? They live reactive lives. Lives ruled by fear, doubt, anxiety, confusion. They keep waiting for the world to calm down so they can finally feel peace. But peace doesn't come from calm circumstances. Peace comes from a calm mind in the middle of any circumstance. You don't win by making the world easier. You win by becoming stronger inside. This is why training your mind must become your greatest priority. Just like your body needs physical resistance to grow, your mind needs mental pressure to evolve. Every offense? Training. Every delay? Training. Every rejection, every misunderstanding, every setback, all of it. Training for your emotional discipline. You want to be unshakable? Then stop praying for ease. Start preparing for impact. Because the strongest minds are not built during comfort. They're forged during friction. And when you've been through fire, when you've faced chaos without breaking, when you've learned to breathe in moments others would explode, that's when you become untouchable. Hill taught that the greatest power a person can possess is self-direction. Not being pulled by mood swings, not being hijacked by other people's drama, not being manipulated by false urgency. You don't need to respond to everything. You don't need to be liked by everyone. You don't need to defend yourself to anyone. You only need to master you. And that begins every time you feel that emotional wave rising. And instead of reacting, you pause. You observe. You breathe. You remember, I control how I respond. I own my energy. I set the tone. That is leadership. Not over others, but over yourself. That's what Hill called the first and most essential form of success. Because no external victory means anything if you're still at war inside. No amount of money, fame, admiration, or success can fix a mind that hasn't been trained. You'll sabotage it all. You'll lose yourself the moment things don't go your way. But when you have control over your thoughts, when your peace doesn't depend on outcomes, when your mind has been conditioned to stay focused even when the storm hits, that's when you're truly free. Because no one can take from you what you built inside, and no storm can break what has already stood in fire. So from this day forward, train your mind like your future depends on it, because it does. Your relationships, your wealth, your health, your legacy, it all flows from your mental state. If you master that battlefield, you master your life. If this message has resonated with something inside you, if it's awakened a fire, a sense of truth, or a glimpse of the person you're capable of becoming, then don't let it fade. Anchor it, declare it, own it, because this is not just another motivational speech. This is your line in the sand, the moment where you stop living like everyone else and start leading your life with intention, silence, and strength. Napoleon Hill said, "Every major breakthrough in a person's life begins with a firm inner decision, not a passing emotion, not a temporary motivation, but a decision. The decision to stop reacting like the rest and start living like the rare." Think of a warrior entering battle. He doesn't expect ease. He expects resistance, setbacks, traps, pain, but he still moves forward. Why? Because he's prepared. Because his mind is stronger than the battlefield. That's who you're becoming now. A mental warrior. Someone who breathes when others panic. Who stands tall when everything feels uncertain. Who doesn't need the world to change. Because you've changed yourself. You no longer depend on outside approval. You no longer seek to be understood. You no longer explain yourself to people who aren't even listening. You've realized something that few ever understand. External validation is emotional slavery. Every time you chase it, you give away your power. You let others define your value. And no one finds peace while begging to be recognized. But there's another way. A path where you are enough. Where your mind becomes your greatest asset. Where you validate your own journey. Quietly, daily, relentlessly. Where you walk with your head high, even if no one claps. Where you build a presence so solid, so steady, so unshakable, that even your silence commands respect. Hill wrote, "Success requires no explanation. Failure permits no alibi." You don't need to talk about what you're building, you just need to build it, brick by brick, day by day, through silence, through setbacks, through focus. And as you grow, criticism will come. Let it. Because what defines the strong is not what they hear. It's what they ignore. The loudest opinions often come from the most lost people, and you are no longer available for that kind of noise. From this moment forward, you walk differently. No more reactions. No more explanations. No more needing to be liked to feel worthy. You lead with your mind, with your energy, with your inner certainty. So, if this message lit something inside of you, if you feel like this was more than just words, then I want you to declare it right now. Write it in the comments. Not for me, for you, to affirm it, to lock it in, to burn it into your subconscious like a promise. I no longer react. I lead from silence. Because that's what today is. A new starting point. Not a speech you'll forget, but a standard you'll live by. A standard of clarity, of discipline, of purpose, of truth. From now on, every step you take is a quiet declaration. You're no longer here to please. You're here to lead, with conviction, with integrity, with identity. And that identity, it no longer depends on noise. It now rises from the deepest place inside you, your truth. You've learned that you don't need permission to be powerful. You don't need to fit in to be respected. In fact, the more you let go of needing to be liked, the more people will respect you, because people don't admire the ones who bend. They admire the ones who stand tall, who know what they want, and who walk forward without apology. And if you ever forget, remember this: the world doesn't belong to the loudest. It belongs to the most authentic, to those who choose themselves every single day, to those who keep going even without applause, to those who've learned that external approval is a trap and truth is the only freedom that lasts. This is your moment. You don't need to prove anything. You just need to live it in silence, with presence, with authority. Because in the end, the world cannot shake the one who has mastered themselves.